Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something a lot of you are aiming for, sounding more like a native English speaker and doing it faster.
Yeah, it's a common goal.
For just memorizing words, right?
Yeah.
Our mission here is to really pull out those key tips, the techniques from experts that give your spoken English that, natural flow.
Exactly, the practical stuff.
We're diving into what goes beyond just knowing the vocabulary or the grammar rules.
Absolutely. Because having that solid base, vocabulary, grammar, it's crucial, obviously. But often the real difference, the thing that makes you sound, native, is those subtle ways speakers actually use the language.
Okay, yeah.
That's the interesting layer we're going to dig into today.
All right, so if it's not just about packing in more words, what is that core difference? How do native and non-native speakers typically sound different?
Well, fundamentally, it really boils down to things like intonation, rhythm, and, of course, pronunciation. Think of English as having its own music, Native speakers, they naturally connect sounds together when they talk. That's what creates that flow, that rhythm.
Music. I like that analogy.
Yeah, it's less about individual words standing alone and more about how they sort of dance together.
Can you give us an example, like how does that connecting sounds thing actually work?
Sure. Let's take a simple question. What are you doing?
Okay.
Someone learning might pronounce each word very clearly. What are you doing?
Right.
Very distinct.
Robotic almost.
Kind of, yeah. But a native speaker, they'll likely squash it together, blend it. It becomes something like, what ya doing?
Whatcha.
See how what are you just melts into whatcha? That blending, it happens all the time, often just because it's easier to say. It's a real hallmark of native speech.
Right.
The key takeaway really is native speakers blend words naturally.
Got it. Smooth transitions between words. Okay, let's get practical then. What are some quick pronunciation hacks we can use? Things to make us sound more natural right away. Where should we start?
A really good starting point, and one that often trips people up, is mastering sounds that might not exist in your first language. The TH sound is the classic example.
Oh yeah, the TH. Definitely a tricky one for loads of learners. What's the secret to getting that right?
Well, native speakers make that TH sound pretty smoothly, whether it's the soft one in think,
right,
or the more buzzy one in that. The common mistake is swapping it for a T or maybe a D or S sound, so think comes out sounding like tink.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. So what's a quick tip? How can we practice nailing that TH?
Okay, here's something really concrete you can do. Just gently place the very tip of your tongue between your front teeth, upper and lower.
Okay, got it.
And just try to slowly push air out around your tongue as you start the word, like think. Feel that little bit of air, that friction.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the sound. Just practice that slowly a few times. Focus on the tongue position, the airflow. Thick, 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 thick.
That's super clear. A small physical change, big sound difference.
Ooh.
Okay, what's another pronunciation thing that often gives non-native speakers away?
Another really interesting one, especially prominent in American English, is how R, and particularly T sounds, can get reduced or changed.
Reduced. How so?
Think about a word like butter. In American English, you'll often hear it pronounced more like butter.
Ah, right. Butter.
Yeah, that's often called a flap T. Basically, when a T sound falls between two vowel sounds, it often softens into this really quick, light D sound. Technically, it's an alveolar tap, but it sounds like a soft D.
Okay, the flap T. And that makes it sound smoother, more relaxed.
Exactly. It contributes a lot to that fluid, connected sound.
Can you give us a couple more common examples, everyday words?
Absolutely. Water very commonly becomes water.
Water.
And better often turns into bitter.
Better, okay.
It's subtle, maybe, but you add up all these little changes, and it really affects the overall rhythm and sound.
So how can listeners start doing that, using that flap T? Is there a specific exercise?
Honestly, the best way here is probably immersion and listening. Start really tuning your ear to how native speakers, especially Americans, say these words.
So like movies and podcasts.
Perfect examples. Watch American films, listen to podcasts hosted by native speakers. Don't even worry too much about the rule at first. Just listen. Try to absorb those natural sound patterns, that softening of the T.
Okay.
Your ear is actually amazing at picking the stuff up if you just give it the chance.
Yeah.
Then you can try mimicking.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Learn by listening, then copy. Okay, so we've talked about individual sounds. What about stringing words together? How do native speakers get that effortless flow in conversation?
Right. This brings us to what you could call maybe Fluency boosters. A huge part of why native speakers sound so natural is they use common phrases, shortcuts, and contractions all the time.
Shortcuts.
Yeah, they just naturally use more informal, quicker ways to say things. It makes speech faster, more relaxed, helps build rapport, too, in casual chat.
So embracing the informal side of spoken English, can you give some clear examples of these fluency boosters?
Sure. So instead of saying very correctly, I am going to the store,
Mm-hmm.
you'll almost always hear a native speaker say, I'm going to go to the store, or just, I'm going to the store.
Right. Gonna.
Exactly. Or instead of did you eat, which is fine, it's much more common to hear dia eat.
D-A eat. Much faster.
Yeah. These little contractions, these sort of relaxed verb forms, they really speed things up and just sound more natural in conversation.
They definitely change the rhythm.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any like super common fast phrases listeners could practice right now?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Here are a few you'll hear constantly. How's it going?
The classic greeting.
Totally. Instead of, how are you?
And then there's what you up to?
Instead of, what are you doing?
Exactly. Super relaxed. And maybe give me a sec.
Give me a second. Useful. Very useful. These are just everywhere in daily chat.
Great examples. So what's the best way to practice using these? Just say them over and over.
Well, repetition helps, definitely. But maybe try this. Say the phrase first at a normal talking speed. How's it going? Then try saying it a little faster. How's it going? Then faster again, but keep it clear.
Okay.
Doing that helps build the muscle memory, kind of gets the rhythm into your mouth,
Right. Speeding it up gradually. Okay. So we've hit blending sounds, tackling tricky pronunciations like TH and the flap T, using contractions in these fast phrases. What's the biggest thing, the most impactful step listeners can take to really boost their native-like sound? What's the final challenge?
I think the single most powerful thing you can do is active immersion and mimicry.
Mimicry, like copying people.
Exactly. Find a native English speaker you can listen to regularly. Could be an actor in a movie you like, a podcast host, maybe a YouTuber, someone whose voice or accent you find clear. And your job is to really listen. Focus on their rhythm, their melody, their pronunciation, and then try to copy it as closely as you possibly can.
That sounds like a really direct way to learn. What specifically should you listen for when you're trying to copy?
Pay super close attention to how they link words together, that blending we talked about. Listen to the melody, the intonation, how their voice goes up and down. That carries a lot of meaning.
Right, the music again.
Yeah. And listen for those specific sounds like the TH, the flap T, how they use contractions. And here's a pro tip. Record yourself.
Ooh, okay.
Record yourself saying the same sentence or phrase as the native speaker, then listen back to both. Compare them. It might feel a bit weird at first.
Yeah, hearing your own voice.
Totally. But it's incredibly valuable for hearing exactly where the differences are, where you can tweak things.
That's a great actionable tip.
Yeah.
Okay, so a quick recap on the practice reminders then. Blend words. Don't say each one separately. Practice every day if you can, using real stuff conversations, podcasts, movies, and maybe most importantly, speak with confidence, right? Fluency comes from practice, not from being perfect instantly.
Couldn't agree more. Don't let that fear of making a mistake hold you back. Seriously, everyone makes mistakes when they're learning. It's totally normal.
Yeah?
The more you actively listen, the more you practice speaking, the more natural and confident you're going to sound. It just happens over time.
This has been super helpful. So we've covered blending sounds, nailing specific pronunciations, TH, flap T, using those common contractions and fast phrases, and really the power of listening and mimicking.
Yeah, those are the core techniques.
It really seems to come down to consistent practice and just developing that ear for how English actually sounds when people talk.
Precisely. And when you start applying these things consciously, consistently, you might be really surprised how quickly your spoken English starts to shift to sound more authentic.
So a final thought for you, the listener. How could really focusing on these techniques change how you feel about speaking English or even how you understand it? And maybe who's the first native speaker you're going to really tune into and try to emulate? That's your next step, your own deep dive. Thanks for joining us.